Welcome to the Aussie Game Podcast, where we talk all things Australian football. Special little bonus episode that we're recording just after the turn of the new year. So happy new year, happy 2026 to everyone. And we've got Mopper here with me. How are you, mate?
Yeah, happy new year, everyone. I hope everyone had a good Christmas, and a special episode to break down and have a look at the 62 players called up by Tony Popovic in his reign, and a good time to do it as we head towards March and speedily to the World Cup. Obviously, our last game was in November, but we've got some exciting things happening, like the under-23s Socceroos coming up. And some players in a little bit of limbo and some players playing regularly. So it's very interesting to see the pecking order, which we're about to discuss today.
Yeah, so we're going to play a little game today, something a little bit different. So we're going to do lock, shot, or not. So the rules, Mopper, are that if we think the player is an absolute lock for the World Cup squad in June, so no matter what they do in the next 6 months, injury aside, they're locked in, they're a lock. If we think they're a shot, so they're really up in limbo, they've come into camp or they've been called up by Tony Popovic, but still not quite convinced that they're in or they're out, they're a shot. Or the alternative is that they're not. So they have been called up before, but based on current form or based on lack of game time or based on what Tony Popovic has done with them, they're not. And we're going to try and narrow the squad down. But there's a lot of different talking points that we're going to go through in the 62 players that have been called up. So let's start, mate, with the goalkeepers. This is probably one of the more straightforward positions. Matty Ryan, we think, is a lock. Paul Izzo, we also think is a lock. Patrick Beach is a shot. And Joe Gauci is a shot. Tom Glover, the fifth goalkeeper that's been called up, but he's probably not in the calculations at the moment. But do you want to go through the keepers, mate?
Yeah, so let's look at the two keepers who we think is a shot at the World Cup for that third and final spot. We'll start with Patrick Beach. So we'll look at his 25-26 stats. He's had 15 games, 6 in Asian Champions League and 9 in A-League. But I think the Asian Champions League is giving Beach some value, and I think it's really adding to his experience. And we've seen him get capped for the first time in November, so that's exciting for Beach. He's certainly in form and has certainly raised some eyebrows over that third position. He did play for the under-23s 9 times as well in the current calendar of the last couple of years, so very interesting to see which way this one goes. If we look at Joe Gauci, currently not playing at the moment, he's on the bench, but he has played 15 games, League One, FA Cup and EFL Cup. The advantage of the cup football over in England's got him up to the same amount of level of games with Beach, but only played that one minor substitution for the Socceroos in the last friendly campaign. So very interesting. They're very even. Do you go for Joe Gauci with the experience Popper's thrown him in before, or do you go for the rising Beach? That's the big question. And then we'll just talk about Tom Glover, who has been picked by Popper before. He has just signed yesterday for Omiya Ajadi, over in Japan Division 2 to obviously get some game time, but he's been without game football since he left Borough 6 months ago. So they're our probably, we'd probably confirm that probably Tom Glover's not in this reckoning, and we've got a straight shootout between Beach and Gauci.
Yeah, I think that's right, Mopper. Matty Ryan and Paul Izzo locked in. Matty Ryan getting some consistent game time now with Levante, and Izzo the same at Randers, and probably we thought Gauci was the incumbent to come in, particularly with Tony Popovic giving him some game time straight up in his time, his first couple of games for the Socceroos. But with Gauci's lack of game time at Port Vale now and Patrick Beach continuing to rise with his performances for Melbourne City, I think it's a real shootout between those two as to who gets that last spot. So we'll see what happens in terms of Gauci's situation at Port Vale and to see if Beach can keep his form up. But will be very interesting coming into the final couple of camps before the World Cup squad is announced. All right, mate, let's go to right backs. So we have locked in, we have Lewis Miller and Jacob Italiano. On the fringes, as a shot, we have Fran Karacic, who has been called up a couple of times, but he's yet to play. And then we saw James Overy called up in the latest squads, but he also didn't get game time. And we're going to say the knots, Sammy Silvera, whose game time has really dried up at Middlesbrough, and Rhyan Grant for Sydney FC, who was called up early, but is not in contention as far as we're concerned.
Yeah, I think the big lock there is Jacob Italiano because he can play both sides. I think that gives enormous flexibility, and with the squad's going to 26, it just gives the opportunity to have a player like that who's versatile. We know how injury-prone Bos is, and we've played roles out there as well. And look, Lewis Miller plays centre inside right back at Blackburn, so I think Italiano's versatility will definitely get him in, and he's performed those 2 games for the Socceroos. Unfortunately, he missed the last 2 due to a calf injury, but no doubt his form with Grazier is enough. Even though their team's not going well, I think Jacob Italiano definitely will be a lock for me. Karacic is interesting because obviously he's been selected a couple of times without success with injury. So Popovic has obviously put the branch out there. He still wants to look at him. So we can't rule him out just yet because Popovic wouldn't have gone back twice if he didn't think he had something to offer. Overy is an interesting one. Under 23s, it will be a fantastic tournament for him. I think he's got a great opportunity to start. And again, his versatility playing both left and right, wing back or full back, gives him another fantastic opportunity to make this squad, especially you'd think Papa would be looking to the future to carry 1 or 2 younger players. So I definitely think he's an opportunity. Sammy Silvera, he's struggled for game time with Borough since Matt Taggart arrived, and I really think I'm not sure where he sits in the Borough lineup at the moment, getting bits and pieces, but didn't really impress with the Socceroos. Just probably needs another year of maturing and some consistent football. And Rhyan Grant's probably, he just went tried and trusted probably at first up, and I don't think we'll ever see him back. A stalwart for Sydney FC, and has had a good career. So I think this is a very interesting one, especially with Lewis Miller being right centre back for Blackburn. Obviously, Socceroos Popovic prefers him on the right, but hasn't started him much in the friendlies. Whether that's strategic to have a look at other people is probably the key element in this one. But yeah, they're an interesting right back, isn't it? That second or third backup position, I still think is available.
Yeah, you're right in terms of like Lewis Miller obviously playing in a slightly different spot for Blackburn. Italiano's had his injury issues, but does have that versatility. Karacic, injury issues, but not getting a lot of game time in Croatia now. Overy, I think I agree in terms of this under 23 tournament. I think it's a huge opportunity if you get some game time to prove his worth in the squad. And as you said, he can go either side. We've seen Sammy Silvera go either side as well, and he can even play further forward. So I don't think he's in the opportunities there, but does offer some flexibility. And as you said, Rhyan Grant did have quite a consistent run in the Socceroos team, particularly under Graham Arnold. So has played for the Socceroos and did very well for a period. But I just don't think that he's in with a shot at the moment. So yeah, very interesting right back spot. We almost don't have, with Miller's kind of out of position, you don't really have a guaranteed right back, but then there's some options there for Popovic. So yeah, I guess we'll see how we go closer to the tournament. And before we get on to the centre backs, I just want to say, like, if Popovic is considering playing Miller as the right centre back, we do have a wealth of options there that we already have there for right centre back.
Yeah, the centre backs are quite full, aren't they? When we go through this list, and I'll go through the list of centre backs here that we have. So we've got Cam Burgess, we would say definitely is a lock. Circati, definitely a lock. Degenek for us is definitely a lock. Kye Rowles is definitely a lock. We've seen him play left back and left centre back as well. Hayden Matthews, we believe is a lock. We know he missed out on the last couple of friendlies, but we believe he's been in Popovic's plans for a long time and starting to start now for Pompey. A couple of games off the bench for him. The interesting ones for me is these players have all got a shot. So let's look at the ones with the shot. We've got Jason Geria has been used in Popovic's lineup. Jack Iredale has been on the fringes of the Socceroos, but playing week in, week out with Hibs. Trewin very interesting player, playing Asian Champions League in Melbourne City. Performed very well for the Socceroos, both in the start of the camp and at the end of the games and the friendlies. Thomas Deng, he'd be an interesting one, probably on the more fringes of the edges, just due to our depth. Harry Souttar to return for injury late January would definitely have to be a shot if he's fit enough. You would potentially put him in as a lock, but obviously we need to see game time. Stensness also would be a good shot. He's back from injury and playing, so very interesting. And we've seen Alex Grant used early, but we probably ruled that one out with Alex Grant, just with the amount of depth that we've got. Was used earlier on, but obviously we haven't seen him since.
Yeah, I think with the centre backs, we've seen the consistency of having Burgess, Circati, and Degenek. Is that three? And then it's really about how we fill the spots around it in terms of depth, or if you want to change something. So I think you're right in terms of Kye Rowles, because we have seen him utilised in that left back spot as well. So I think going back to the point of versatility and being able to cover spots, or we've seen the more defensive-minded Popovic lineups where Rowles has played in that position, where he's probably looking for not so much the overlapping wing back, but someone who's a bit more solid and almost looks like four centre backs across the whole back line. And then Hayden Matthews, yeah, interesting one. He's had a very much more consistent run of game time for Portsmouth. We saw just overnight as we record, he wasn't in the starting lineup, but before that, he had been quite consistently. So he does get called up regularly to the Socceroos squad, but I think you and I both want to see him get more game time for the Socceroos. But I think just given the fact that he gets called up consistently, we'll lock him in. But yeah, the outside of that, the kind of shots are very interesting. So Jason Geria, his team now been relegated to J2 in Japan, whether he looks to move in January to get some consistent game time. Jack Iredale called up regularly, but doesn't get a look in when he gets called up. Trewin was fantastic across both games that he played in the last window. Tommy Deng, yeah, has been okay in the past, but probably, as you said, more on the fringes. Souttar, we'll see with injury. And then Stensness, like, he had a good kind of back end of the season for Viking, but we'll see how he performs. He'll probably need to do a fair bit to get into the squad, but he's a good player and can cover a bit. So, yeah, very interesting centre backs as well. And yeah, as you said, Alex Grant just out, not in with a chance as far as we're concerned.
Yeah, I think Popper in his 26 team selection will probably pick around 8 centre backs, and that's probably because you look at Kye Trewin can play in the midfield as well anywhere along that back line, and also two Kye Rowles, like you said, can play a variety of roles. So, look, I think there'll be 8 centre backs picked. I think as you said, with our locks, there's no doubt that they're playing. They're on the plane due to the amount of game time that they've played and consistency across the last couple of calendar years. And yeah, a couple of probably open spots, probably depending on Harry Souttar's return to fitness and whether he can get back playing and fit enough, will be probably the big question mark. The rest are all fighting it out, aren't they, on the fringes? But I definitely think Kye Trewin's got an advantage with the ability, with his versatility, like Rowles, and could be the not the bolter is probably the wrong word, but definitely one that he would definitely look at for versatility.
All right, let's finish off their fullbacks with the left back spot. Jordy Bos, we're locking in for sure. Let's hope his current injury isn't too bad and he's back to full fitness for Feyenoord very soon. But outside Jordy Bos, we have spoken about some of the other right backs being able to cover left back, and of course Kye Rowles as well. But Callum Elder was called up in the last window, performed pretty well. Aziz Behich has been a regular, but has had some injuries and just lack of game time for the A-League meant he didn't get called up in a few of those previous windows. Kasey Bos did get called up one time, but looks like he's injured and wasn't getting game time at Mines before that anyway. And then Jason Davidson, would say he's not in the mix at all at the moment. So, yeah, left back's interesting. Outside of Jordy Bos is probably more questions than answers with them.
Yeah, I think it's the most open position, but again, we know Rowles and Italiano and possibly Overy, if he's picked, can play both sides. So I think the depth is in other areas that can be covered from this space. I think Behich probably picked due to experience. He's still not probably a lock though, because there is question marks, obviously, how much football he'll get leading into that World Cup with the A-League. But still, I think that experience piece and leadership probably around the group is probably Popper will probably favour. Callum Elder, a consistent championship player for a number of years, could offer some great versatility. He just suits Popper's style, doesn't he? His tactical positional awareness, being in that left wing back space. It'd be interesting, but I think Behich will have the edge based on previous past to the Socceroos, and obviously the other two that we spoke about, Rowles and Italiano, playing both positions will give them the advantage in this space. But we all know Jordy Bos is our number one, but again, he's struggled for injuries, and it'd be interesting to see his next 5 months where he sits, and obviously just make sure he's fingers crossed that he's fully fit for this World Cup. We can wrap him up in cotton wool in May.
I wonder how much of a risk Popovic will take in terms of that left back spot, because when I look at someone like a Callum Elder, he's playing consistently for Derby, starting just about every game. We saw just the other night that he got forward and provided a really nice assist. So he's got that go forward in his game. He's defensively pretty solid, as opposed to someone like an Italiano who can cover both, or like a James Overy. So I think it's really interesting. Aziz Behich is obviously a designated left back as well. It's probably for me still a shootout between Elder and Behich for that left back spot. And then I think in terms of the squad he picks, he will look to cover every position, but then it will be just in terms of who plays that flexible role, who can cover the majority of those backline positions. Because, like, in reality, he's only going to play if he can, let's say, about 7, 8 max of the backs that he picks. So if he's picking, say, 11 of them, there's still going to be ones that are just going to sit on the fringe and only get used in desperate situations, or just coming along for more experience. So yeah, it'd be very interesting to see what he does in terms of that position.
Yep, lots of question marks on that, and all different players there too, like styles, which is interesting. Like they all offer something different, don't they? So the question mark will be what Popovic sees against the three teams that we face. Who probably best suits that opposition. So interesting time.
Sorry to cut. I think we've seen with Jordy Bos how different we look when he's in the team. Like, I don't, as much as these other guys might be able to get forward, Bos just offers us so much more when we when we win the ball and our ability to transition quickly. So I think without him locked in there, and you might, if you're going to plug, you might bring him off, late in the game to shore things up if you're bringing on a Kye Rowles. But I would really like us to play Bos whenever we can in the World Cup, just because of what he offers going forward and just an all-around player that he is.
Oh, absolutely. He's a star. And yeah, it'll just be, like you said, tactically when and when not to push that button. So, yeah, look, it's going to be exciting. Could be a bit of a breakout with the World Cup with him as well, because obviously his form with Feyenoord and leading up with the Socceroos has been nothing short of blue chip material. So, exciting times ahead. Everyone's excited by watching Jordy Bos on the world stage.
All right, mate, let's do defensive midfield. Locked in, we've got Max Balard. We've also got Aiden O'Neill and Jackson Irvine. And for a position where we've had a fair bit of depth and strength, it might be strange to be only locking 3 in, but we've got Cam Devlin as a shot. I don't think we can lock him in, just given he hasn't been given a call-up, despite how well he's doing in Scotland. Paddy Yazbek obviously performed well for Nashville and has done well for the Socceroos as well. Alex Robertson got called up in the last window, but didn't see any game time. Paul Okon-Engstler, currently injured, but has been called up as well and played. Ryan T getting pretty much no minutes now in Belgium, but was a pretty important part early on that game against China when he got his debut. He performed really well. And then probably the ones that are not in the mix, we're thinking Anthony Caceres, Gianni Bacchus, currently injured anyway. Maslowongo with the long-term injury, and just wanted to know that Nectar Triantis was called up at a point, but he's now playing for Greece, so obviously not in the mix at all. But yeah, what do you make of the defensive midfield options there?
Yeah, good depth here now. We've really built up over the last couple of years in this area. We've seen the uprising of Max Balard, the workhorse there that probably complements Aiden O'Neill. They're both really high work rate hybrid midfielders. And then you've seen the return of Jackson Irvine, the experience, Mr. Calm, helps us move the football a lot better, come into that mix as well. They're all locks. They're on the plane, no doubt about that. The interesting ones is we've seen a sprinkling. We've seen Alex Robertson come back, bit of an X factor, going well in League One with a lot of praise. We've seen the rising of the under 20 star Paul Okon, bit of an X factor again. So very interesting where he's placed in the future Socceroos. So probably Alex Robertson Okon I'll put on for the development stage for the Asia Cup next year, but they're definitely in the consideration and they're definitely on the way up. You look at Yazbek, Devlin, they're both workhorses, aren't they? Devlin, fantastic season for Hearts and really pushing his claims. Like you said, it was a little bit disappointing not to see him with the Socceroos, but he's definitely in a reckoning. But again, tough to break into this midfield mix. Yazbek, experience, done it before, previous World Cup, can offer a lot of work rate defensive cover as well. And then Ryan Teague's probably the most disappointing one out of this group. He's obviously, like you said, started, gone through, moved to Europe, and it just hasn't worked out. He's probably got some big question marks now on what he does for the next 6 months. Can he look for a loan to get some football and get back in that reckoning? But he's just totally outside the window now. And you've seen that punishment with no Socceroos call up in that last couple. So, his career's a bit of a risk with the Socceroos, but still, I think in the mix and in the reckoning. But we'll have to need something in January to move forward. He just cannot sit where he is right now. And what's he got? 1 minute in the last 3 or 4 months? It's just not good enough. And it's not his fault. It's just a competition of Europe and the lessons you have to learn when you make that move and where you go to. With Caceres, Bacchus, Luongo, and Chernis, and obviously, has left. Luongo's out, serious injury, so we won't see him and Bacchus. 3 months hamstring injury. He'll be back in March. It'd be a high risk, right on the borderline, but I can't see it with the other midfielders in form. So it'll be very interesting to see who backs up Balard, O'Neill, and Irvine in that midfield mix. And I think Cammy Devlin, if you go on form right now, should be the one. The question mark for me is which youngster gets, or Robertson's a little bit older than Okon, but which future Socceroo is going to be the one that gets the ticket? And then probably Yazbek, I would say, would be very close to a lock for the Socceroos, but very interesting around those last couple of positions.
Yeah, I think provided Cam Devlin's form keeps up in Scotland, you'd have to say that he's getting close to being locked in, but we have seen him caught up twice now caught up for that last window, but not get a look in for game time, which was disappointing and a bit strange as well. But you're right in terms, Devlin's probably like 27, 28, but you're right in terms of Yazbek, Robertson, Engstler, even Teague. They're all kind of, nice to kind of 24-ish and under. So yeah, they really are the next gen coming through in that mix. And there's probably you'd say maximum 4 positions, maybe 5 at a stretch. So yeah, if we're putting Cam Devlin in there, it makes it very interesting to see if any of those other guys can force their case. I don't know, some people might debate it as well, Caceres, just his ball playing ability, but I just don't think that with the other options at Popovic's disposal that you could fit him in. But there's going to be some tough calls that have to be made in that mix because he's not going to be able to take the majority of these players. And yeah, if we're locking in those 3, and even you look at Maxi Ballard before that New Zealand series, the Soccer Ashes, you probably couldn't have put him into the calculations as well as he was doing at Breda. But we've seen him come in and perform really well. So you can't discount his ability to be able to come in and do that.
I think the good thing with this group is if you look at the ones now locked in, Aiden O'Neill starting every week for New York, Jackson Irvine starting every week now. He's back from injury for St. Pauli. Max Ballard starting every week. Cam Devlin starting every week. Yazbek was starting every week. Robertson's pretty much starting every week. Okon's starting every week for Sydney. So it's most of these midfielders are all starting and all playing in different levels. And I think that's the positive with this defensive midfield group that I think I've seen in the past with the World Cup campaigns that hardly any players are getting minutes at clubs. I think they're going to have a lot of football under their belt and a lot of good friendlies under their belt. It's going to be a massive advantage. So, yeah, some tough calls again to make, but that's what World Cup selection is all about.
Yeah, for sure, mate. The attacking midfield is really interesting as well. So locked in, we've got Connor Metcalf, who's been really consistent and consistent under Tony Popovic as well. Martin Boyle, we saw him pull up with a hamstring injury the other day for Hibs, so we're waiting to hear how serious that one is, and it'll be very disappointing if he was to miss another World Cup. Of course, he missed the last one in Qatar as well. Nestor Irankunda has hit some form for Watford, which is very pleasing to see, and he's just one of those players that you just need in a squad. I think if he starts or if he's off the bench, he just offers something completely different. And Riley McGree, again, currently injured, but we saw how good his form was when he came back for Borough and how important he was for Middlesbrough. So there are our locks in this one. And then in terms of a shot, we've got Adrian Segacic, who was called up for the New Zealand series, but didn't get any game time. Nishan Velupale, who's just come back from injury for Melbourne Victory and is looking pretty good, and we know that he's one of Popovic's favourites. Aiden Hrustic has found some form at Heracles over in the Netherlands. And then Craig Goodwin, playing pretty well for Adelaide United at the moment, and we know that he got called up in the most recent international window, played at left wing back, which I don't think is his best position, but you'd have to say that given he was called up so recently that there's a shot that he comes in. So, and the other ones, very interesting, the ones that we probably would have thought were locked in a while ago. Anthony Calick, not so much. He did get called up in the New Zealand series. Nicholas Milanovic, his game time has completely dropped away for Aberdeen. Daniel Arzani, the same at Ferencváros, and Marco Tilio. Unfortunately, his move to Rapid Vienna hasn't yielded so much game time either. So I don't think any of those last four in Kalik, Milanovic, Arzani, and Tilio, I don't think they're a chance. So they're a not for me.
Yeah, look at the four locks, like you said, Connor Metcalf, Sam Pauli, getting game time off the bench and probably was one of the better players of the Socceroos over the last 12 months. So really seen a different edge to Connor Metcalf. He's played consistently under Popper and really impressed with the Socceroos. Martin Boyle missed the experience, been in the World Cup. He unfortunately missed with injury the previous one, but has been with the Socceroos group for such a long time, playing at Hibs and scores Premier League consistently. Look at Irankunda, Watford in the top six of the championship, flying in good form this year. Had a couple of small dips, but they're just, again, Socceroos' performance was outstanding. Riley McGree, blue chip midfielder, set up that goal to send us through against Japan, and you've seen what he's done for Borough. And again, previous World Cup experience. These four don't need any more discussion. They're just absolute going to be on the plane and are blue chip players in blue chip leagues at the moment, playing really well. The interesting ones, I'll skip the shots for a second, go straight down to the ones that I don't think are going to make it, obviously, based on their moves. They've made some terrible decisions, I think, with Tilio and Arzani, and it's cost them big time. Not just this year, but like on the latter part of last year. I just think they were in no man's land, and unfortunately, they're going to pay the price and need to go and find something that's more balanced for them. Milanovic is interesting, great form last year or last season, and then had a sprinkling of Socceroos there, but then just, again, for club football, has just fallen off a bit off the radar a little bit, not getting much game time. And Kalik, you've already discussed. So I don't think with the amount of depth they've got that we've just discussed, I don't think they're any chance now, even if what happens in the next 6 months. The interesting runs are the four that you mentioned in the middle that have a shot. Segacic on the rise. I think future proof this young man. I think he'll probably be just on the fringes or just miss out, but I think Asia Cup and beyond for the Socceroos is definitely an opportunity. He's a future player for me. Would love to see him in the squad, but I don't think he'll be in that. He'll be right on the edge, obviously, depending on what probably happens next 6 months. If he can really keep going and build on that form and make a loud call, he might just sneak in. But I think we're looking at probably Asia Cup next year. Velupale is, like you said, spot on. Popovic will be stoked to see him back for Melbourne Victory and playing well. Will game time just in the A-League be enough, but and not be able to see him until probably March will be the big question mark. But I think Velupale started for the Socceroos when he was under Popo and he relied on him and did really well. So I would think that Popper would lean back that way. Rustic is a bit of an X factor, isn't he? He's a different style of player, bit unique. Probably not the hardworking, what he's got with the other players, but can hold the ball and can create, which is probably what he's got with the difference with the other players. So, bit of an X factor, I think, Rustic, especially playing with Oracles and playing every week consistently, is a bit of an X factor. And I think, unfortunately, Craig will miss out in this group because I just don't think the A-League's going to be enough to see him through. He's got a lot of experience, but I think there's too many other cases for other players that are in front of him and in higher leagues and playing better football. So I love Goodwin. I think he's a great player and a great stalwart for the Socceroos, but I think this campaign might just be a bridge too far.
It's very interesting when you look at this grouping, like we've grouped them as attacking midfielders, but when you look at the profile of the player, and I agree with you about Aiden Rustic, I think he's quite unique, but I would also put him in the category of a Riley McGree and a Connor Metcalf. And then on the contrast of that, you got someone like an Iran Kunda or a Valupale. So I think we've seen in a lot of Popovic's squad, we have a balance of one of those profiles and one of those other profiles. So one that's a bit more of a ball carrier, a bit more can create, and one that's a bit more kind of speed and a bit more kind of more direct. So I think like he's really going to have to try and find that balance with what he does there if he's still going to continue. So I think sometimes when you look at like a Rustic, if you do have Connor Metcalf and a McGree in there, do you have room for a Rustic in there as well? And it's the same thing for like a Valupale. So you've already got an Iran Kunda type midfielder there. So then if you're putting Boyle's probably more of that. He's lost a bit of speed, but he's probably more of the outlet as opposed to the creator. So I think you probably need that the balance of the two. But again, similar to the defensive midfield, I think there's in that the shot, there's going to be some good players that are going to miss out on this opportunity. So Segacic and Valupale probably toss up a coin kind of, and it might depend on the type of profile he wants there. Like, does he want Valupale for his directness, or does he want Segacic for his creativeness? As if he's going to add a fifth kind of attacking midfielder to this mix. Let me throw one at you, mate. That's a bit left field. We saw Daniel Arzani get called up with next to no game time in one of the recent windows. Is there any chance he's barely played at Frank Barros? Is there any chance that Popovic calls him up just because he has done in the past?
No, not a chance. I don't think he's in the mix due to a number of factors. Did he play when he was called up? That's probably answered my question, your question there. So I just think there's too much depth in front of him at the moment now, and a lot of players are past him. And I think if he would have gone overseas and played and pushed his claims, I definitely think it would have been a great opportunity. But I know he was called up without minutes, but I think it was, to see where he's at, to still say the Socceroos are still in that space. He's still in that reckoning around that top 50, top 60. So when Asia Cup and all that comes around, if things turn, you're still in my thinking, and it just didn't want to cut him adrift. And I think that's why he called him up, and due to that not playing any minutes. So, but I don't think he's a chance for this squad at all because, as you said, like, I think Rustic and all that's going to be in front of him. Valupale is going to be in front of him. They're just playing football, and they've proven in the past as well. So I just can't see him getting into it. There's Segacic's on the rise. You've got a good one that's been a stalwart, but they're all playing football and he's not. So I think it's a massive disadvantage, and he'd have to do something in January. And it'd have to be an X factor move, a loan move or something. But I can't see that happening considering he's only joined the club from 6 months ago. So I think he's made a wrong move. It was a risk that he probably had to make, but it hasn't worked. So I think Arzani's going to have to wait until probably after the World Cup to get back and push his claims. It's the same with Tilio too. I think it's the same situation.
Yeah, I think at least for Tilio, he's gotten out of a bad situation at Celtic, and he's probably just still finding his feet at Rapid Vienna. But for Arzani, he's gone to Frank Barros, and I think they've got restrictions on the number of foreigners that you can have in a matchday squad or a team. So, yeah, it's really restricting even his ability to make a matchday squad, let alone get some minutes. So I think, yeah, like I still think he's not in the mix, but just found it interesting that Popovic has been very critical of him in the past as well, but seems to still call him up at times. So, but yeah, I tend to agree with you or the not. Just wanted to throw that one out there for you. All right, let's finish off with strikers. We've actually only got one player locked in for the strikers, which does throw up a lot of questions in terms of what we do in this position. We know we only play with the lone striker, but Mohamed Toure is the only one we've got locked in. Our shots, Nick D'Agostino, mainly because he got called up recently for Tony Popovic. Before that, he wasn't really in the mix, and Tony Popovic was full of praise with him after the USA game when he played there. Mitch Duke obviously has just moved to the Macarthur Bulls, so we'll be looking for some game time there. So you'd have to say that he's still a shot. And the other shot we've got is Apostolos Stamatoulopoulos. Limited game time for Motherwell, but has still been scoring goals for them, but would probably need to turn around his game time and have more of a goal return to be a good shot at getting in the mix. But the ones we've put a line through, maybe a bit harsh for some of them, but Denny Juric, we still got called up, but was forced to leave camp injured. Hassan Toure actually got some minutes the last time that he was called up, but it was a bit of a left field decision to call him up, I thought. Adam Taggart's been called up in the past, but I don't think he's there. Borello the same. Cassini Yangi, game time completely dropped off at Aberdeen, so not in the mix for us. And Noah Bodic has that long-term injury, so unfortunately he's not in contention.
Yeah, look, I think, yeah, like you said, Bodic as one for the future. I think we'll look for him in the next 4 years for next campaigns and Asia Cups ahead. Yangi's just completely out of form and out of the picture. Like Borello and Taggart, I think they're not in the reckoning anymore. There's too many X factors and too many players in too good of a form that have probably surpassed him in the pecking order. Like you said, Toure was probably just to get a look at. I don't think he's going to be in this lineup. Juric the same. Yeah, Stamatoulopoulos, look, he's an interesting one, probably very thin on the borderline. I think we would have seen a little bit more, but he has been picked from Popper before, so you never know. He's still around that mark and still in a Scottish Premier League that his team's going well in. Mitch Duke's a really interesting one, isn't it? Like previous experience, got work rate. What's he looking for? It's Popovic's prototype. Sometimes number 9 if we're defending, so like a lead. So a very interesting one with that. Nick D'Agostino, another question mark. Where does he sit in the pecking order? Like you said, he's been called up, full of praise, and obviously Norwegian champion too with Viking. So that would be on his caliber now. So, and look, Toure, there's no words to describe what a great year Toure's had. I think there's a lot of players that haven't been picked that are X factors that are in hot form at the moment that probably raise more questions than answers with this one. And I think who provides that backup 1 or 2 strikers is going to be a hot race because, like you will say in the next segment that we're looking at, the X factors, most of these players are in really good form, have been in the under 23s and under 20s and really doing well. So I think if we look at this, I think Agostino and Duke are probably fighting out for one spot. It'd be interesting to see which way he goes with it. But I think the rest of them, Juric, Toure, Taggart, Borello, Yangi and Bodic are probably looking at over the next campaigns or have either come to the end with this one because there's just a lot of depth coming through in this area at probably the right profile of age.
All right, so if we're locking in Mohamed Toure, but even the ones we've given a shot, we're not that certain. Who's one of the X factors you think might fill one of these striking positions then?
Well, hot on everyone's radar at the moment, Sapsford is scoring against big teams. Celtic in Scotland is scoring consistently. He's in great form. He had a good year last year. He's just taken his game to another level. We didn't see him in the Socceroos in the last 12 months, and some people would go probably why, which is a good question. But I wouldn't discount the run-in that he's going to have with Dundee United with the next 6 months because they're in the top 6 and they're going to be playing some good games. And if he continues his form, I think he could push into that reckoning, if not one for the future as well. You can't discount Max Caputo. I got no doubt Caputo would have been, if he would have been released, would be in the under-23s, but unfortunately he's not. But again, scored at the under-20 World Cup. He's playing great with Melbourne City. He's scoring the Asian Champions League. They're big stats. You know what I mean, for a young fella, and he's a good big body. Which could be a good target man, something different, something variety. So definitely an X factor. You can't go past the exciting Jed Drew. He's having a great season in Europe. Copped a couple of injuries, but his form's been fantastic. Last year he had a great season, and in the under 23s, which I think is most important out of this X factor group, he is in the under 23s, and I think will start and get plenty of game time, and could be the deciding factor whether he's actually looked at in the next 3 months. I think Jed Drew's got an exciting period there with the Asia Cup with the under 23s. I think he's got a big advantage there. And, you could throw in Archie Goodwin, the Golden Boot, for A-League last year. Didn't see much time for Charlotte, but he is a 21-year-old on the rise and has played in the lower Australian teams as well in the underage bracket. So there's four really hot targets at the moment that I think from a striker point of view that we could definitely look at. And I wouldn't dismiss, even though they haven't been picked in Popovic's side before, because they're all in good moments. Like I said, Sapsford in Scotland next 6 months, Archie Goodwin has got America to go back to. You've got Jed Drew in under 23s and Max Caputo in Asia and in the A-League. They're great setups for the next 6 months for him.
Yeah, I think there's some options there that Popovic hasn't looked at before, and some due to injury and some due to other reasons as well. But I could definitely see Sapsford or a Caputo. I think they're probably the front runners for me in terms of that number 9 position to get a look in. Sapsford obviously in great form for Dundee United in Scotland, and then as you said, Max Caputo scoring consistently for Melbourne City, both in the league and the Asian Champions League elite competition as well. So yeah, it probably depends on the style of, because Caputo is probably more of your kind of Toure mold, whereas Sapsford might kind of run in behind a little bit more. So, but I don't think it hurts to have an option there as well, because if you're playing against a high line or you're playing against a low block, you're going to want different profiles of players as well. So I could definitely see one of those two jumping ahead of some of those shots in terms of D'Agostino, Duke, or Stamatoulopoulos in terms of how their form goes. Probably a bit further back, I agree with Jed Drew. It's a big tournament for him, the under 23s. We thought he might be a chance to get into one of those previous Socceroos squad before he got his back injury, but now he's back for Hartberg and they're on their winter break, but it'll be a good chance for him to come in and prove his worth. The other one, Cam Pupion, obviously a level down in the Netherlands, but performing really well for ADO Den Haag. And then Alex Badelardo, we saw him get injured the other day for the Jets versus Auckland. So fingers crossed that's not a bad injury. But if it's not, I think he is the type of player that could really turn it on. And the Jets having a pretty good season in the A-League. So they're probably the attacking options. And just probably one final one for me, Johnny Katrumbis, in terms of an option fullbacks. He can cover both sides, as we've spoken about, but playing very consistently for Motherwell, and Motherwell having a fantastic season. So, yeah, there's 7 names that haven't been called up that we think might be a shot to get called up in March or in the final squad for Socceroos.
Yeah, you can't ignore Pepion. I like your selection there. Was at Brighton for 5 years and had a great nurturing career there, and obviously seeked some more time and went to Den Haag and has 23 appearances, 5 goals, and has been in the under 23 Socceroo lineup for a long time, playing 14 games, scoring 1 goal, and was in the under 17s as well for 5 games. So he has been in the setup. So sometimes you don't need players to be called in the Socceroos. If they're already in the setup, like Jed Drew, like Pepion, they've been seen at that national level anyway. I'm sure they all get together and they're all watching the profiles of these games. I think they got massive advantages there. It's the same with Badelardo and Caputo. Yeah, they've been in that setup. So we've seen Okon being brought in. I don't think it'll be too far away before we see Caputo and that join the Socceroos at some stage, whether it's a future look or whether they get their good form in the next 6 months and really say, well, you cannot not pick me, because I definitely think they've got good profiles leading in the next 6 months. Unlike some of our others that we crossed out, like the Yangies and the Tilios and the Zanis just don't have a good profile in the next 6 months, and we're not going to see much if the same thing continues to happen. And the risk is, even for that one, is Joe Gauci, who's got a year-long loan. If he sits on the bench and Beach is playing Asian Champions League and they go on a run, he's just going to be at the front line, aren't they? You're gonna probably pick players, no matter what Gauci's done in the past, that are in form and on the rise, because realistically, your number 1 and 2 are probably already locked in.
Yeah, it's a big 6 months for a lot of our players. And I think there's form in terms of players coming from left field. I believe it was Arzani in the 2018 World Cup that just had an outstanding season at Melbourne City that just couldn't be ignored. And then we saw Grant Quoll be called up late into the squad in the 2022 World Cup. So there's definitely opportunities. I wouldn't say that all the positions are certain at this moment. There's still opportunities for any young player to have a really breakout last 6 months. And it's probably important coming into a World Cup that you're picking players that are confident and in form and can have the opportunity to shine at a World Cup. So let's just go through and summarize. So we've got Matt Ryan. These are our locks. So we've got Matt Ryan, Paul Izzo, Lewis Miller, Jacob Italiano, Cam Burgess, Alessandro Circati, Milos Degenek, Kye Rowles, Hayden Matthews, Jordy Bos, Max Balard, Aiden O'Neill, Jackson Irvine, Connor Metcalf, Martin Boyle, Nestor Irankunda, Riley McGree, and Mohamed Toure. They're our locks, mate. There's 18 of them locked in. So that leaves 8 more spots if we're picking a 26-man squad for a bit of wiggle room for some of these players to be able to force their way in.
Yeah, I think that 18 that you mentioned will be probably the starting lineup and on the bench. I think that the rest of the 8 will be the squad players. I don't think there's anyone breaking into this lineup to be on the bench or in the starting lineup. I think the 8 that you've looked at are definitely going to be the ones that are going to fill those squad positions and rotation, and if there's an injury or need something unique. But we wish everyone well. It was great to touch base with you on the Socceroos since we haven't played since November, and look at where they're currently sitting and where they're playing. It's exciting times ahead. We're getting closer and closer to March, and we're getting closer and closer to that World Cup. So exciting times ahead.
Yeah, big, as we mentioned a couple of times, big tournament for a few players, that under 23 Asian Cup. We don't know our opponents yet for that March window, but that's going to come up really quickly. But look, as always, let us know your thoughts and feelings. These are our opinions on where we think the players that have been called up and haven't been called up are currently sitting with the Socceroos, but we'd love to hear your thoughts on which ones you agree, and no doubt there's some that you disagree with us on. But it's just a very exciting time to build up for in the squad. Yeah, we look forward to seeing who's picked in the March window, and then that's going to be the final window before we see that squad picked in June. So yeah, exciting times ahead.
Absolutely, mate, and look forward to seeing all those Socceroos in action in the next 6 months.
Absolutely, mate. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for your time, Mopper. We'll be back for Sunday as usual. In the meantime, enjoy football.